All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April 30th, 2024 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG-Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. For anybody who's new here, that pretty much boils down to just be friendly and nice to everybody. All right, we can get started. I don't see any announcements on here. One announcement is the SIG annual reports are coming up. Arvind, I think, opened up a draft PR for that, so I'll be reviewing that later today. We could probably put a link to here in case anybody else wants to review it. But for anybody who's not familiar with what the SIG annual reports are, it's a kind of a yearly self-reporting for the SIGs for kind of the health of the SIG. We kind of go over what projects and initiatives are being worked on, and also it's a good chance to highlight where we think we need new contributors, where we can focus, and it also just kind of some reminders to clean up things like all your owners files and things like that too. So we'll take a look at that and hopefully, like, if anything comes out of that, respond to that as needed. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to announce before we move on? Nope. All right. Next spaces. We'll give new contributors if they're on the call kind of some space if anybody wants to say hi or introduce themselves. This is totally optional, but if anybody wants to, yeah, just introduce themselves, feel free to unmute or raise your hand. All right. I don't see anybody with that, so let's get into the agenda. I mean, I think this is something that you added. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So it seems Dan found a lot of tests while cleaning up the networking tests related with Windows as well. Some examples is like the session affinity that was implemented under the test E2E network folder and was never enabled back to validate on Windows. So from last week conversation with James, seems we only run conformance tests directly. But it seems we could have more room to bring these other things that exist. There are a few that are odd, like dual stack or IPv6. Not even sure if the CNI supports this, but some of them seems feasible enough to enable.
Okay, yeah, I see that Claudio commented too. I think Claudio did a lot of work in the past to run, like, to re-audit all the ones that were Linux only and re-enable or like drop the Linux only label on a bunch of these. So let's see. Okay, so yeah, this is saying that we made our conformance. I think that I don't know how much, like, how many tests this would add to, but I don't see any reason why we should only run the conformance test, especially if it's testing functionality that's working. If we want to keep the test that we use for like the pre-submit jobs and things kind of shorter, we could always do another, like, a longer test that doesn't limit it to conformance, but
yeah, there's no reason we can't run other tests that pass. I think it's just a matter of having somebody go through and create a Ginkgo focus that would select those set of tests and then, long-term maintenance of them.
yeah.
I can start with the session affinity ones, like uncomment the Linux only, create a PR and see if passes and like go from there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the first step is probably, like, if we think that they're gonna run on Linux, drop the Linux only label and see what happens. But yeah, I think the more test coverage, the better, especially if it's things that we're kind of expecting or like not expecting to definitely not work. We should kind of move some of that.
At least start to take a look and see his comments make sense.
Yep. Yeah. I think the more test coverage, the better. So we can kind of do that. Does anybody have anything else to say about this? We could maybe take a deeper look at this after we're done with the rest of the agenda. Okay, I see this. The next one is the spiky tests for CPU usage failing in SIG-Windows nightly builds and on AWS EKS CI. This is there specific tests that were flaking? I think we were discussing some of them in the triage meeting before this, but do they happen to be like?
Yeah, there's a thread Slack, and I think G's on the call here. So
Yeah. I can link to the.
The specific test, I think it was the same one that James worked on the PR for fixing the zero values returned by usage nano course. However, we're seeing a different error message from the test case. We're seeing that it's saying our usage is exceeding the limit by 5%. So it's not about returning a zero values, even though it's the same test that's failing.
I've actually seen that before too, where it's saying that the container limits were the test checks to make sure that the CPU wasn't using more than 5% of what the limits was, and it was failing. Okay, I just found the thread in Slack. Let me fix that.
So I guess my take is that I may have missed some of those error messages, and maybe something sneaked in during a like an Windows update that makes it more frequently. How often are you seeing it happen? Because we've had that test failing for such a while, and we thought we had identified what the problem was. But how often do you see it failing because of the 5% versus the zero value?
I do not have the relative percentage of those two errors. I will have to look into all the failures, but we are seeing the test case being more flaky in container D1.7 for sure, because it's very hard to get a pass test after we migrated to 1.7.
Yeah, so 1.7 has that issue with the zero value, and so that is that so you're going to probably see more because of that, and it would be interesting to see how often we're going past the 5%. You linked to an issue that we did see in ours. Yeah, Mark pulled it up here. Yeah, I think identifying if this is something else that's happened and how often it's happening is probably the next step I see.
I'm pulling in the test case too to see. I think do we just set I believe we set the limit to just half a core, right?
Yeah, 0.5.
Yeah. So we set the CPU limits to like half a core, and then we run it, and where was that? And we're at like another not a lot more, but a little bit more. I've seen this a handful of I've seen this occasionally. I don't have a good sense of if we see this more a lot more frequently than the reporting zero metrics or not.
I guess we could look at the Kubernetes for this particular, that 5% error message, and see how often that's happening.
What is that, the triage?
The triage, yeah.
Which so okay, let's double check. Here's, yeah. There's gonna be a couple of failures. So it's, does anybody remember what the error message was off or for the when it says 0? So we can just do a quick comparison. If not, I can try and look and find it. Or I guess we can just see all of the failures for this job. I think we saw. Do you remember which test bias we saw that in, James? What time was it? Where's my?
Yeah, here it is. I got the message. Sorry, I was looking it up.
Okay. Actually, both of these. Did you paste a message? Did you say yeah? Both
Those are
of the ones
okay.
that failed in the master serial cell test pass recently are for exceeding container limit usage.
I think we'll have to also check if you set a limit. I don't know the exact answer. If you like set a limit, if it is allowed to go over just a little bit, how the like Windows OS handles that limit on the job. And if it does allow it to go over and we're seeing it go over by like 7% instead of 5%, then maybe we need to just tweak the test as you suggested.
Yeah. It actually looks like, at least if we're just looking at the couple days, that going over the limit is more frequent than not having any container usage reported. So here, this is for if it's greater than 0, and there's just been 2 flakes, and it actually looks like they're in container.
But is the limit exceeded happening on 1.6 as well, or only 1.7?
Do we have any that are testing on 1.6 now, James? I thought
Nope.
that everything's
I think-
1.7.
Yeah, we're at 1.7 now across the board.
So at least from our AWS testing, we recently moved to 1.7, and in the past, we are always on 1.6, and we have not seen this error that frequently. Maybe once in a while out of 28 clusters or something, but definitely not at this frequency.
When you see the error and when you look at the failures, does it look like it's just slightly over? Like,
Yeah, it's like, for example, it's like 8%, but the threshold is 5%, so we're
Yeah.
over hugely.
yeah, I think probably what James suggested is the next thing. Let's check let's check with Windows, because I know we just set the CPU limits on like the job objects, and see if that's supposed to be like a strict enforcement, like do not ever allow more CPU time than what's allotted, or if it's a little bit flexible. And if it is a little bit flexible, probably relax that test to not like a little bit more than 5%.
Sounds good.
Will you open up an issue on the Kubernetes with your findings, and then I can link that to the right folks who own the Windows stuff.
So which repo I should open the issue?
On Kubernetes, you can open on Kubernetes.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you.
Just CC or do /SIG-Windows and maybe CC Mark myself.
If you haven't opened an issue in Kubernetes before, when you go to new issue, there's a big template in like that's mostly commented out, and you can read through it and uncomment certain sections. One of them is which area or which SIG, and just do SIG-Windows, and then we'll get notified of that.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so those are those 2 issues. We'll look into them. Does anybody have anything else they'd want to talk about today? Do we want to look more at the Linux only tests, or if not, I think I'd be happy to end the meeting and then start looking at the draft annual report.
Yeah, I think there is another open issue with these flakes on the service OEDC. Just
Yeah.
trying to find
That one's been open for quite a while.
I just tried to run on CapV like for 12 hours without any issues. So I don't think it's related with there's something already in the infrastructure or the test running in parallel, something outside this context.
Okay.
Again, it's the same image builder source.
Where is it's oops. This one? So you're saying you weren't able to repro it on CapV?
What's that?
You're saying you were not able to repro it on CapV?
No, with the same configuration.
Okay. Interesting.
How many runs did you do it on? 4 hours. Okay.
4
Wait, I'm
hours, but then I let it run and it will run for like 12 hours with 1,000 tests without fail.
I think at one point I had it didn't fail in like 800 runs of the test, and then it finally failed for me. So it's like so yeah, but yeah, that sounds pretty legitimately passing.
Yeah, like I run the pod inside the job, like the job that the inside the pod and like in a loop doing the same requests as like the agent host in parallel, and nothing happens for this time as well. So
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's been commented in the issue before too, but it's like we've really only seen this in CI, right, James? Like I don't think we've ever seen any like reports of this being an issue in any of the like in any actual workloads, which is quite strange and frustrating. So okay, well I think we'll keep looking, and I don't know. I think James, we should probably decide pretty soon if we want to just add a retry for this.
Yeah. I mean, what's your CNI using?
no, I'm running from my own machine.
But which
What
CNI?
CNI is on the
Oh,
cluster?
CNI, sorry, Entra.
Entra. Oh, what was that, Arvind?
Sorry, I think this was the issue we were discussing, and I thought we had decided even last time to just
Add the retry?
and see if it actually, made a change, right? Like-
Okay, yeah, I thought Amin was gonna take a look at it. Okay, yeah, let's just add a retry. And continue to monitor to see it. Like
Yeah.
it's enough that by next week we should be able to tell if a retry
Correct.
or not worked.
Only other thing I actually wanted to talk about was, are we thinking about creating any sub-projects in SIG-Windows?
I don't know if we had any ideas for more sub projects.
Okay. I
We
guess
could-
SIG-Windows DevTools, is that?
Yeah,
guess
so
that-
I think like SIG Windows DevTools, Windows GMSA, those are all considered sub projects.
Okay, all right.
Do we?
Or I think the question is, right, they wanted, like, there's a big push in the community to create these sub-projects and assign, like, leads to them that are outside of us. as in
That's right. I remember them talking about that in some of the leads and
Yeah, I
TLs.
guess that's what I'm asking about, not about whether we need any sub-projects, but do we need to, like, other than the 4 of us or the 5 of us who are already chairs and leads, I think they wanted us to add, like, basically increase leadership. I don't know where we are with that.
I think definitely open for discussions and seeing, like, we can ask who has time or who the desire to, you know, help lead some of those
Okay.
projects.
Maybe next week we can talk about it a little bit more, or
Yeah,
and then start a Slack thread about, you know, canvassing folks, asking them if they are interested, because I'm guessing, you know, SIG-Windows DevTools could use an owner, SIG-Windows, what is that? Operational readiness could use somebody.
some new folks, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, like, and I think it has to be, like, for example, Ameem can't go and become operational readiness because he's already a tech lead, right? It has to be someone outside of that. So yeah, let's.
I need to go and reread some of the guidance that was it Contribex has put together for that.
Yeah, I read it last night as part of writing the report. I started looking at it. In fact, if you go and review it, there's one place I didn't put a check mark just to make sure that
We go back and
yeah. So, like, if you tell me no, we can put a check mark and then we can take care of that in 2024. It's totally fine. But that's where my thought process started when I saw that.
okay, yeah, I'll
Right.
take a look and keep
Cool.
that in mind as we're reading that too.
All right, nothing else.
Excellent. All right, see everybody around.